If only one knows oneself, then there is eternally an inconceivable perfection. Brahma Nirvana. A few minutes ago, I was looking at some verses in the Bhagavad Gita. And in the verses it referred to a yogi who passes beyond desire and anger, reaches Brahma Nirvana. The translator translated it as Brahma-Bliss. But looking at the Sanskrit, it says Brahma Nirvana. Then again a verse a little later says, the devotee, the word is yati, so we could say one who strives. Knowing himself, or knowing the self, reaches Brahma Nirvana. Again translated as Brahma-Bliss. It is a good translation. Yet the word nirvana also means extinguishment. So we could say, he reaches extinguishment in Brahman. How does he reach such extinguishment? By knowing the self. What is this Brahma Nirvana? This extinguishment in Brahman? It is nothing less than the complete dissolution of the false assumption of existing as an individual entity, an ego. And with it, the extinguishment of all the associated illusions. All the illusions built up on the premise of existing as an ego, of existing as an individual entity. How is that ego assumption, that false identity, to be extinguished? Sri Bhagavan has explained. By inquiring, who am I? The only thing that can be extinguished is the unreal. The real exists forever, without birth and without perishing, without growth or diminishing. So nothing real can be extinguished. Only the unreal can be extinguished. The self, which is truly your existence, cannot be extinguished. Only that which is not the self, but imagined to be the self, well, that imagination can be extinguished. Inquire to know yourself deeply, discerning within yourself the answer to the question, who am I? The answer is neither perceived nor conceived, for it is non-objective. Who am I? The misidentification with the body should be extinguished. The misidentification with the senses or as a sensing entity should be extinguished. The misidentification with any thought or with the mind should be extinguished. It is extinguished by the interior knowledge born of profound inquiry that you cannot in your real nature possibly be a body, and none of the attributes or activities, states or conditions of the body have ever had anything to do with your real being, which is of the nature of consciousness and bliss. Similar is it with the senses and the mind. You have never thought of yourself, and you have never sensed yourself, nor will you ever sense or think of yourself. All that is objective, as well as transient. It is not the self, and in truth it is not real. To find that which is real, know yourself. Such knowledge is thought transcendent. A thought cannot be yourself, but in self-knowledge, the knowledge is yourself. That is to say, in self-knowledge, your own being is the knowledge. Being is identical with consciousness and bliss. Satchidananda, being, consciousness, bliss. 3 terms for one and the same thing. Not 3 aspects of one thing. 3 terms to explain one inconceivable real nature. The consciousness which knows all thought, all that's conceived and perceived, is never perceived by the senses and never conceived in thought. Even now and always, this is the case. To suppose otherwise and confound yourself with what is merely a product of thinking is an illusion. The ending of that illusion, such imagination, is nirvana, extinguishment. The basis of every other idea is the notion I, as the Maharshi often pointed out. With the rise of I, he says, all else rises. With the subsidence of I, all else subsides. So then, all else, the entirety of all that is illusory and actually unreal, rests on the single notion of I. Inquire, who am I? That is to say, inquire as to what is the nature of the inquirer. Who am I? Nirvana is the extinguishment of that I. The I that is the basis of every other delusion. The basis of bondage and the one who becomes bound. The basis of confusion and the one who is confused. The extinguishment of that I is the nirvana, or extinguishment, in Brahman. How can something that is real or has any aspect of reality be extinguished? It cannot be. For what is real ever is, and what is unreal never is. For the ego to be extinguished, it must be entirely unreal. Question yourself, who am I? We may loosely speak of your identity changing from that of the supposed ego or individual, the embodied being. shifting to that of Brahman, the vast absolute, God or the self. We may loosely speak of it in these terms, but what actually is your existence always? Are there two positions, the real self and a false self, and a third one who will change from the false to the real? There is only one self, which is indicated by the ever undivided existence of oneself, which is true for all. One's existence is absolutely singular. Ideas may be multiple, but existence, your real being, is singular. The thoughts may be multiple. The consciousness, which is, as the Upanishad says, the unknown knower of all that is known, is absolutely one and never multiple. Define it in terms of I, thoughts, and the body, it seems as if divided in multiple. When such false definitions reach extinguishment, by knowing that they are false, the consciousness, the existence, is absolutely undivided, undifferentiated in any way whatsoever. Brahma Nirvana, extinguishment in Brahman. It is by knowledge of what is real, that the unreal is extinguished. When the unreal is extinguished, nothing has been extinguished. But the illusion of bondage and suffering is over. And the bliss that is innate of the very nature of being consciousness remains. Brahma Nirvana. It is the extinguishment of the I, of the ego notion. When it is extinguished, nothing has been extinguished, for it did not ever exist to begin with. Yet all its delusion is over. Brahman alone is real. Brahman alone exists. That alone is the self. Realizing this within yourself by a profound inquiry, that the self alone exists, the self alone is real, is the perfection of supreme bliss. Being unborn, it is naturally immortal. Understand this as the goal for which you strive. And understand this to be the abiding reality, the very nature of the one who strives. Understand this by deep inquiry, and understand it as the nature of the inquirer. By self-knowledge, Brahman knows Brahman.